What is going on, guys? Welcome to the video. I hope you're all having a good day. Today we are going to be breaking down step by step on how to accomplish your dream physique. I'm going to be covering a ton of different topics, so make sure you are in a quiet room, grab a pen and paper if you have to, because we are going to lock in and get you jacked.
All right, so here is the ultimate guide to physique development. This is a step-by-step breakdown on how to build muscle, lose fat, and transform. So if you're looking something like this, follow the steps that I'm about to outline, and hopefully, with enough time, you can build the body that you dream of. So, before we get into it, why would you guys listen to me? Well, I want to give you guys a quick little backstory about who I am and what I do. So before I learned about weight training, I was lost in life. I played sports, I played basketball, but I was always pushed around and I was always made fun of for being the skinniest kid on my teams. I had a good social life, but I felt insecure all the time. And I really felt insecure about my body. I was skinny, insecure, and frankly, I was overwhelmed with life. Worst of all, I wasn't disciplined. I didn't have anything that woke me up in the morning and that gave me a fire in my belly. Everything changed after the first day that I was introduced to the gym. I had a high school gym at my high school. It was a small weight training gym. And I started going there after school. And once I started doing that, my eyes opened to how fun and how awesome the journey of physique development really is. I started to progress, though my progress was slow. I was eating whatever I had at home. I was hitting random workouts that I would see on Instagram, following whatever influencer was telling me to do. And I had no structure. I was just doing whatever I felt like in the gym and whatever seemed like it would make me grow. I wasn't sticking to anything consistent. So, although I was able to develop a sense of purpose and something to look forward to at the gym, I still wasn't able to crack the code on how to actually maximize my results in the gym. So, what changed? I learned that structure yields results, not motivation. How many of us lean on motivation to get to the gym? You get that quick burst after that Instagram reel where you see David Goggins yelling at you, but the second you tie your shoes and you go to the gym, that motivation isn't there anymore. What I realized is motivation, it's a very, very powerful tool, but it's temporary. What is not temporary is structure. Having habits and routines that actually yield results. Because that is how you adhere to a plan, and that is how you stick to something, and that is how you actually get the gains that you want. I stopped majoring in the minors and I started nailing the basics. So no more copying fancy influencer workouts that you see on social media. No more trying out these fancy fad diets, sticking to whole food diets, sticking to getting my protein in, learning how to train on a consistent basis, mastering my form on compound movements, very simple things. I nailed those. I stopped focusing on the little details that don't matter. I started focusing on what actually matters. This took tons of trial and error, but over time, I developed a foolproof system to get jacked in 90 days. And the way to do that is by mastering 4 key pillars. These are the 4 key pillars that I've mastered throughout my journey, and the same 4 key pillars that I preach to my clients on their journeys as well. So let's get straight into it. The four pillars of physique development. Number 1, we have understand you. Now, it's so easy to get caught up in the idea of chasing numbers and chasing goals, right? The second we have this goal of getting in shape, all we want to do is just go straight into the gym, get straight into the kitchen, start cooking up our meal prep. But none of that stuff will stick if you don't understand who you are. So what you need to do is you need to ask yourself, what are your fitness goals? And you need to Get really, really deep into this. So don't just ask yourself what you want to do with fitness. Ask what fitness can bring to your life. So instead of saying, I want a six pack, dig a bit deeper. Why do you want a six pack? Is it so you can feel confident when you're shirtless on the beach? Is it so you can appear more attractive to your partner? Is it so you can have more energy to play with your kids? Understand the deeper why behind why you want what you want. What is driving you to lead this healthier life? Because I'll tell you right now, optimizing your fitness is the most incredible way to increase the quality of your life. Everything gets better. For me, I started lifting weights because, like I said, I was very insecure and I didn't have any direction. But going to the gym allowed me to have a sense of purpose because every single week I saw a little bit of progress that motivated me to continue to go to the gym. And now it is a staple in my life. It is the foundation of my life. I can't imagine my life without it because it is such an essential part of who I am. And the discipline I developed from the gym trickles on to every single aspect of my life. So understand your why and ask every time you feel a lack of motivation, you have your why to fall back on. You also need to figure out what type of exercise you enjoy and what hasn't worked in the past. So have you tried specific exercises that you just didn't enjoy or specific training styles that you haven't enjoyed? Every single failure in your fitness journey is a data point because it tells us what exactly you don't like. Based off that, we know how to develop a training plan that can allow you to stick to it. Because at the end of the day, training optimally, whatever that means, does not matter if you cannot adhere to your plan. Adherence is number one. So if you understand what type of training you like, that is the best training to center your program around because that training program is going to be something you can stick to in the long run, and anything you can stick to is going to get you results. As long as it's not CrossFit. That's a little shot to the CrossFit community. You also want to ask, what is your schedule looking like? Are you working a regular 9 to 5, or are you an investment banker working 80 hours a week? These factors are going to impact how many days a week you could train, right? If you have a very, very busy schedule working 80 hours a week, maybe you only have time to go to the gym 3 days a week. That is fine. Don't try to overwork yourself and overshoot for 6 days a week. 3 days a week is just fine as long as you can stick to it, right? If you have a little bit more time, then you can add some extra days. So it's very case by case, but you need to figure out what your schedule looks like. I personally work in banking, but I work a regular 9 to 5. I work in wealth management. So the hours are pretty consistent and I'm able to go to the gym 4 days a week. Right now I'm on a bodybuilding prep. So I'm doing cardio every single day, still able to manage it, right? But understanding your schedule will allow you to plan out your week in a way that allows you to make sure you're hitting your workouts, make sure you're getting your steps in, make sure you're getting your meals in without affecting your work life, because that is going to be very, very important. So, pillar number 1, understand you. Ask yourself these introspective questions and you will figure out who you are, what your why is, what type of training style you love, and how to implement that training style in your schedule. Up next, we are going to get into nutrition. Pillar number 2. You will never outwork a bad diet. I don't care what anybody says. Diet is a core foundation to your physique. 30 minutes of incline treadmill burns about 300 calories. That is a handful of peanuts. You can just eat that in seconds, right? So not saying cardio is bad. Cardio, there's a time and place for cardio. I'm doing cardio every single day, like I said. But if your diet is not on point, there's really no point in doing cardio. You need to improve your diet and you need to lock in on your nutrition. So a lot of people look at food as this reward, something that you need to look forward to. And I love food, don't get me wrong, and I plan off-plan meals all the time. But you need to start looking at food as fuel, right? Food is not a dopamine hit. Food is your fuel source, right? So once you start developing that perception around food and understanding that every piece of food can either increase your energy or diminish it, you'll start making a lot more conscious decisions on what you put in your body. And that'll affect exactly how you feel, exactly how you think, how you operate, how you execute. So there's different starting points. You can either start off skinny, you can start fat, you can start anywhere in between. I've been both. So let's go through different starting points and see what we need to do to get past them. So, first phase, or first type of phase, the fat loss phase. So, this was me on this top photo about 5 months ago. This was me about last week. So, 5-month transformation. I didn't lose any muscle. In fact, I built muscle and I lost a ton of fat. You can see my abs are popping a lot more here. So, how do you set up a fat loss phase? First thing you're going to do, calorie calculator. You need a calorie calculator to figure out what your maintenance caloric intake is. Once you have your maintenance caloric intake, you are going to use this as your baseline. These caloric trackers or these calorie calculators, they're not always accurate because everybody's body is different, but it gives you a good idea of, what your starting point could be. So what my suggestion is to clients or people who are just trying to get started on their fat loss journey is test out that caloric intake for a week. If you are gaining weight, that means you are in a slight surplus. If you're losing weight, you are in a deficit. If you are staying at the same weight for that week, that means you are right on with your caloric intake. So based off those numbers, you may need to make slight adjustments to figure out what your exact maintenance is. But once you know that maintenance and you are trying to get into a fat loss phase, you need to understand that eating more, let me draw this out actually. This might be a little bit more engaging. So this is your baseline. This is your baseline, right? Eating more than your baseline caloric intake will result in a weight gain. Eating less will result in weight loss. Okay, very, very straightforward. Calories in, calories out. So if you're in a fat loss phase, you want to be eating less than what your maintenance intake is. Simple. I suggest a deficit of 200 to 600 calories per day. But like I said, this is a very case-by-case basis. Some people, you can put them in an even deeper deficit. Some people, maybe less. It really depends on your starting point. But a general kind of range is 200 to 600 calories. So for example, if your maintenance is 3,000, you're going to be eating anywhere between 2,400 to 2,800 calories per day. And over time, you'll be shedding off fat. And you have to make sure that as you're doing this, you're still resistance training to hold on to muscle. And your performance in the gym is still high because you want to hold on to as much muscle as possible. So that's the fat loss phase. The next phase that you could be in is a gaining phase. So it's the same thing here. You have your baseline caloric intake, your maintenance calories. You just want to eat in a surplus. So once again, numbers will vary person to person. If you're an experienced lifter, you actually don't need as big of a surplus because your rate of muscle is a lot slower, right? It's a lot harder to put on a pound of muscle when you're in year 5 of lifting compared to year 1. when you're in an early stage of lifting, just let's say you're a newbie and you get put into a gaining phase, you can really, really have fun with your caloric intake and your surplus because your nutrition partitioning is a lot higher up because you're growing so fast. Your body is constantly in this state of muscle protein synthesis. So whenever you're consuming protein and and carbs in your post-workout nutrition, it all gets allocated towards the muscle building process because you're growing so fast. So here's a client case. My client Lawrence, I've been working with him for a little over a year, and he was able to make this massive transformation. So his first year of lifting, we put him in a hard gaining phase. At a certain point, his surplus was up to 700 calories because he was building muscle so fast. And his body needed that fuel so he could continue to grow. Obviously, there is going to be some fat gain when it comes to your gaining phase. If you're eating in a surplus, not everything is going to go to building straight muscle, but that's part of the process. You need to go through a gaining phase to build the most muscle you can possibly build. And then if you do accumulate additional fat, just get into a fat loss phase, like we mentioned earlier. Okay. Couple non-negotiables when it comes to your nutrition. Protein needs to stay at a constant, minimum 1 gram per pound of body weight. A lot of people will say 0.8 to 1 grams. I personally always just 1 gram. Protein is great, keeps you satiated. It is essential for building muscle. Amino acids are the building blocks for your muscles, and you only get them from protein. So I always suggest 1 gram per pound of body weight. Fats you can play around with. I recommend anywhere between 0.3 to 0.5 grams per pound of body weight. And carbs can fill the rest. So a lot of fluctuations in your macros will come from carbs. So gaining phase, you can throw in a lot more carbs. Fat loss phase, you may have to cut down on some carbs, but you have to understand that carbs are essential, especially around training, because carbs, number one, they promote glycogen synthesis, as well as transporting nutrients to muscle cells. And spiking, allowing insulin to be spiked to transport those nutrients to muscle cells. Carbs play a very important role, especially around training. So you want to center all of your or majority of your carbs or your high carb meals before and after training. You can even throw in some intra-workout carbs. Don't be afraid of carbs. They are your best friend. You need to be carb maxing. Micronutrient profile should be on point. So you need to be intaking high quality whole foods. That's the easiest way to up your micronutrient profile. Get your veggies in. Listen to your mom. She's right about the veggies. They are important. You need to be optimizing your macros in order to change your body composition, obviously, but your macros affect your health and how you feel. And they are the underlying tool that your body needs to function at its highest level. So do not neglect your micronutrients. I can make a whole video on micros and macros as well. But yeah, these both go hand in hand. So the calories in, calories out approach that some people have, if it fits your macros approach, I'm not a big fan of it, because following that approach, when you follow that approach, you are neglecting your micronutrients. So do not neglect these. Pillar 3, we got my favorite, training and programming. So you need to be resistance training minimum 3 times per week. I wouldn't suggest going any lower than this. I feel like 3 is the kind of minimum baseline that you need to actually start building muscle. You could do a little bit less. Obviously, doing a little bit is better than doing nothing. So 2 times a week, 1 time a week. Sure, that works. But for my clients, I always preach minimum 3 times a week. More if you can, but if not, 3 times is good enough. Each muscle group should be hit minimum once per week. So if you're not training your muscle groups once a week, over time, they might atrophy, or you might not build the physique that you want. You need to increase frequency on areas that you want to bring up. So if you have weak points or lagging muscle groups that just seem to be stubborn, the easiest way to get more volume is by increasing your frequency on those muscle groups per week. For me, my arms are my biggest weak point, so I train them twice a week. And ever since I started implementing them, my arms actually finally started to grow. You also want to be prioritizing heavy compounds. So your squat variations, your deadlifts, your bench press variations, your shoulder presses. Compounds are king because not only do they target different muscle groups, but they provide you with a deep level of strength by connecting various muscle groups at the same time to get you that overall strength that you're looking for. Because we don't want to just be able to look good. We also want to be able to perform our best, feel strong. And there's no better way to do that than by doing compound movements. These are just your best bang for your buck in terms of building muscle and building overall high quality strength. Every set should be taken to failure or close to failure. Intensity is our number one most important factor when we are in the gym. So go into every single one of your sets with the purpose of training close to failure or to failure, and give that set the energy and effort that it deserves, because every set is an opportunity to grow. The big three of programming is intensity, volume, and frequency. So these three factors are going to be paramount when creating your program. You need to figure out, how can I balance all of these three things given the amount of days I can train per week, given the muscle groups that I want to bring up. Intensity, volume, and frequency are going to go hand in hand. You'll notice if you prioritize two, one of them will start to fall in the back burner. So, which is totally fine. It's all about creating a program that you're able to adhere to. So figure out how you can manage those three to optimize your performance and optimize your results. Finally, or not finally, up next, splits don't matter. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and asked me, what is your split? Like, the answer I'm going to give them is going to magically make them gain 10 pounds of muscle. It doesn't work like that. Splits don't matter. You could be training in the most optimal split, getting all your muscle groups with the most optimal amount of frequency and providing them with the perfect amount of stimulus with the right exercises. If you're not able to stick to that plan, it does not matter, right? So training split, the number one factor for determining your training split is, can you adhere to it? Do you enjoy your current training split? If you do, you're going to stick to it. And if you stick to it, you're going to get long-term results. So adherence is key. The nitty-gritty in terms of your split doesn't really matter. Up next, track. Whether you have a logbook or an app, you need to be tracking. We all know that progressive overload is a key indicator to tell us if you are growing. But how do you know if you're growing if you don't know how much weight you pushed last week or how many reps you did last week? Tracking is a great way to develop a data set of how your performance is looking and how your progression is looking. And based off that, we can make changes to your program to figure out, hey, I might need a little bit more volume because I've been doing the same weight on bicep curls for the past 3 months. Or maybe I need less volume. Maybe I'm overworking them. So a logbook is a great data point and a great tool that you can use to figure out how you can optimize your training to ensure that you are growing and performing at your best. Finally, form is everything. You can be progressing every single week, but if your form is dog shit, you are not going to grow. So ensure that your form is on point. A great way to do this is by recording your sets. And if you find that you've increased the weight on a certain exercise, but your form looks a little bit bad, maybe you should go back to your old weight and focus on technique until you can actually perform a higher weight set with adequate form. Because if you don't have good form, it's very hard to tell if you are actually growing or if you are just moving the weight from point A to point B. Finally, pillar number 4 is support and accountability. So support and accountability was the missing piece in my journey for a very long time. I kept trying to do everything on my own, but I would fall back into the same old patterns of eating inconsistently, following the wrong plans in terms of my training, and just going through all these ups and downs. And all of that was eliminated when I hired my first coach. Because the idea behind hiring a coach is, why go through all this trial and error when you can have someone who has already been in your shoes and has helped others in your shoes get to your desired outcome. So here's what a coach provides. Number one, a clear roadmap. A good coach, make sure you're getting a good coach, not just any random Joe off the street. A good coach provides you with a clear roadmap. So you get a blueprint and a structure and a proper training plan and program and meal plan that you can follow. And if you follow that plan, you know exactly that you're going to get the results you want. Number two, a coach provides you faster results. Like I said, you don't have to go through the trial and error. You can hire somebody who has been through that trial and error to make it easier for you. You get accountability. This is extremely important because if you are relying only on yourself to stick to your goals, it's a lot easier to fall short on them. But if you have someone who is monitoring you and checking in with you and making sure that you're staying on plan, you don't want to disappoint that person. So the accountability aspect is very, very crucial. You also get objective feedback. So you have a third person from a bird's eye view looking at your physique and telling you what you need to work on. You also get better decision making. So you are able to make decisions around your food and around your training with more of a stronger support system. Let's say you're on vacation and you have questions about your food. You can reach out to your coach and he can provide you with some insight on how to make the right food choices. Or if you are at a new gym and you don't have the equipment that you're used to, a coach can help you navigate through that. Finally, a good coach provides you with education, because when you have a coach, their goal isn't to just give you a plan and tell you to follow it. Their goal is to actually teach you the mechanisms and the why behind that plan. So that way, when you do taper off coaching and you want to implement these habits in your day-to-day life, you have the knowledge that you need to continue to live out a healthy life. So those are the 4 pillars. Before I move on, I just want to let you guys know that every single one of these pillars goes hand in hand. So you can train as hard as you want, but if you don't have the right support and accountability system, you're not going to get too far with it. You can also train as hard as you want, but if you are eating bad foods, you're not fueling your body with the right amount of fuel, you're not going to be able to make progress. You can be eating extremely clean, but if you don't understand you and who you are, you're not going to stick to your plan because it won't be sustainable. You won't understand what is driving you. So every single one of these go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So lock in on all 4 of these pillars, and I promise you, it should be a lot easier to get to your fitness goals. So if all of these sound interesting to you, and if you want to actually maximize your results in the gym and learn how to master these 4 pillars step by step, reach out to me for coaching. I have a system called the 9 to 5 to Jack system. It is an online coaching system designed to guide you towards your physical peak in minimum 90 days. So if that's something you're interested in, send me a DM. I'd be happy to help, or you can drop a comment. My link to my Instagram is going to be in the description below. So feel free to reach out, even if you have questions. I love fitness. I love weight training. So I'm more than happy to have a conversation. I hope this video helped you guys a lot. If it did, drop a comment, let me know, and have a great day. Take care.